Einen wunderschönen guten Abend. Es ist Dienstagabend, 19 Uhr in Deutschland und unterschiedliche Zeiten zwischen Chicago und dem wunderschönen Nähe von Seattle gelegenen Heim von Thomas Wieberneit. Nun sind Sie es gewohnt, dass ich dann rüberschwenke auf die gute englische Sprache, and I will not disappoint you. Such as we have an echo as somebody is listening to our live stream already. And while doing this, I would like to introduce you to our crew this evening. We are pleased that a dream came true, that we won Dr. Graham Hill, as we know him for some days and some years. And we tried in an earlier stage to get him as a guest. And now we were lucky. It worked. And we have a fantastic topic, Graham, on the journey orchestration part, and to create journeys in real life and in reality, and to design future, one needs the customer happiness, not only the dog happiness, and not only the employee happiness, but it is the interesting aspect that in these days, we create a new reality. And the new reality seems to be very important and relying on the customer satisfaction and happiness. So, Graham, your experience over the year after you self-introduce, please, and give us a wrap-up of where you have been active and what you achieved so far in these ages. We know.
Okay. Thanks, Ralph. Nice to be with you. Schön hier zu sein, for those who speak Deutsch. So I've been doing this for a long time. So in a nutshell, a really quick introduction. I've been doing this sort of work for 30 years. I've worked with 30 large corporate clients. What I think it was the 30/30 Advanced, 30/30 Vision. Companies like Ford and Toyota, Huawei, telcos like Telefonica and Vodafone, banks like Suncor and Lloyds Banking Group, RBS. A lot of large clients over the years. I've done a lot of consulting work. I've done a lot of directing work. I've done a lot of operations work in marketing, sales, and service. And as we're going to talk about today, things are changing. CRM evolved to CEM. And CEM, customer experience management, is slowly evolving to real-time interaction management. The next step on the horizon is journey orchestration, we're going to talk about today. And one after that, of course, coming along later for a topic for a future discussion, what I would call conversational commerce. We'll pick all things up as part of the call today.
Why do you say that CEM, CEX are evolving into real-time interaction management? That's an interesting take.
It is. But if you look at where we've been in the past, so customer experience probably started, in my view anyway, with Hine and Gilmore writing the experience economy in 1998, I think it was. I remember reading it on holiday in the south of France in the summertime, thinking this is what's going to be the next thing for CRM. Then hey, presto, it did become the next thing for CRM. But it sort of developed as a cottage industry, starting people drawing journey maps, which I don't believe are particularly much useful at all. The variety of reasons we'll pick up later. It's sort of like it's evolved through a design-only approach, and now we're starting to apply data to that design process. So data analytics, journey analytics, we're applying design research to augment that analytical process. And out of that comes the necessity, I think, and also the ability to manage interactions in real time as people are having them, because that's obviously the best time to manage them, not beforehand and not afterwards. And over time, of course, that then starts to morph into journey orchestration. And of course, after that comes, as I said a second ago, conversational commerce.
Which seems to be a recurring theme, conversational commerce. How do we distinguish journey orchestration from journey management?
So management is a static activity. So if you think about designing a journey or designing a service experience, the service part, the service mechanics, and the experience, the perceptions that people have of how they experience the service in the real world. So in journey management, I might go through a whole lot of activities to set up that journey, which by necessity means putting the technology. If you're not going to be running your journeys, your experience through technology, in all probability, you're not going to be running it at all. It's going to stay on a piece of paper as part of the world's most expensive bookshelf, where every book costs 20,000 or 200,000 euros, and you're not going to get to use them. I mean, lots of roles of journey maps. So journey management is that process of setting things up, if you like, allied with design. Whereas orchestration is the real-time process of managing all the interactions and knitting them together into a coherent journey that helps customers get their stuff done and helps you to get your stuff done. And that orchestration activity, like a director managing an orchestra or running an orchestra, what's playing a piece of classical music, that orchestration activity is a real-time activity, whereas the management part is the organization, if you like, of what you're going to be orchestrating.
Okay, now...
Just a quick question. I just want to define terms a little bit before we move forward. When we talk about journey mapping, some people use that in the prescriptive sense, that journey map is planning the journey for customers. Others use it as more of a tracking device, mapping where they've been. When you're talking about journey mapping, especially when you think that it lacks value in a place, which one are you talking about?
So let's distinguish between two sorts of maps, journey maps, for the sake of argument. The customer has stuff to do. What I would think of as, we all use jobs to be done today. I was trained my jobs to be done by Tony Orwick in 2009. I've been using it ever since. So the customer has jobs to be done, and they have desired outcomes, how they measure success, what they think is good in terms of getting those jobs done. And they interact with companies and others, friends, family, and others as well, in order to get those jobs done. So, for example, when I worked with a large UK bank to map their mortgage process as part of a proof of concept of a journey orchestration tool, we identified 100 key interactions, of which only 30 were with the bank, 70 were with other organizations. In fact, there were 18 different actors potentially involved in the end-to-end mortgage journey. So if you look at that from the bank's perspective, they're trying to create a series of interactions, a journey about where they take a leading role. They're actually looking at the customer journey. They're creating a company pathway. These are the interactions we want to have with you. Think of credit card onboarding. Credit cards has got 3 key roles when you start with a credit card. They want you to sign up, they want you to start to activate, and they want you to start to use it for the first time. If you're really, really good at this, they want it to become your main credit card. So 4 things the banks want you to do. So they're going to organize the onboarding pathway, whether they call it a journey or it's actually a pathway, where they direct what they want to do to get you to do what they want to do. There's nothing wrong with that. In my experience, most customer experience projects are driven by what the company wants to do. If you jump over the fence into the world of the customer has a journey. And that journey may involve using a credit card, but it may involve using other things. Credit cards are a form of short-term lending, very expensive short-term lending, but short-term lending nevertheless. So they use credit card in a different sort of way. So when I took out a credit card with a European airline, it's not because I wanted another credit card. It's because taking that credit card gave me the opportunity to get advantages when I'm traveling as a traveler that I didn't get in any other way, including from the loyalty program of the airline itself. So I took out a credit card to get access to priority services at the airport when I was traveling on a weekly basis. So my jobs are different to the company's jobs. Companies design pathways. I go on a journey to get my jobs done with the company and with others. Companies often don't know what the customer's journey is unless they go and search for it. They tend to be, for good reason, interested in their pathways. So most customer experience programs are about company pathways, not about customer journeys. But if you think about it a little step further, customers don't have journeys either. Customers have things they want to get done. They have jobs to be done. They have desired outcomes. They know what good looks like. So they interact with others to go towards their goals, and they want to get there faster, easier, and better. So the journey emerges in real time. What's my current interaction? What were the last 2 or 3 which I remember? Weren't any really bad ones that were happening, which I remember particularly? And maybe what do I want to do next? All going towards my goal. So in many ways, journeys don't exist for customers either. What exists for customers are the current interactions, the last couple, and perhaps, if you're lucky, the next one. If you're a chess grandmaster, maybe you're thinking 3 or 4 steps away, into the future. But we're not chess grandmasters. So we live in the real world now, which incidentally is why I think journey management revolves around interaction management. Without interaction management, what's the point of journey orchestration, rather journey management? RTM is a foundation for journey orchestration.
Prem is an interesting question here.
Yeah. Should I answer straight away?
Yes, yeah, unless you want to finish a sentence.
No, that's fine. That's a good question. And when I go back a long way as well. So welcome, Prem. I think the answer is very clear. So if you think of the customer's journey or the company pathway, they're all the interactions that you have together with the customer, irrespective of who's originating them, that you both take part in. The customer may see some additional interactions as well that they don't take part in. So they see you doing things on a keyboard, for example, if in the olden days when you actually went somewhere and met somebody in person, but they don't take part. This is the line of visibility and the line of interaction they talk about in service blueprinting. Below all of those things is a world of activities, processes, and data, and what have you, that are necessary to enable those interactions and enable those journeys and pathways, but the customer doesn't see any of those things. All of that in toto is the service blueprint. Service blueprinting, say, for example, the visual approach that I use, borrowed from Flowers and Miller, service blueprinting, practical service blueprinting, is a way of capturing all of that detail, the stuff that customers see and take part in, the journey, as well as all those things in the background that they don't see nor take part in, nor know even exist, but that are necessary to deliver a superior customer experience.
Christy has quite an interesting comment as well here. So the first good news is that most of us are sort of in agreement. But
and I totally agree with Christy.
Yeah.
You think about it, so take my credit card example. The company's pathway is, did he sign up for a credit card, and did he use it? And activate, did he use it? But my pathway, my journey, not the customer's company pathway, is what am I trying to get done? So I need all these things, but actually it's about using it in real life. In order to, in my case, to get access to priority check-in and priority pathway through customs and security to get into the airport. So customer pathways company pathways tend to be a subset of the customer's journey. But both have jobs to be done, and the key of journey design, if you like, or however you want to describe it, is to make sure that you understand what each party wants and how they share resources during this interaction, which is what it's all about, and to organize, manage the design of the journey so it enables all these things, and then to orchestrate that journey in real time so both parties get more of what they want out of it, that they're both happy.
Which ties in with something that Ray just commented. But what I am wondering is now both entities or actors have their own interest in mind. They have their own jobs to be done.
Yeah.
Which leads the company to do something that doesn't really help me, means pave a way or create, not even pave a way, that's too positive, create a way that I'm forced to follow. Whereas I have my own job to be done that might need another journey or another way to go ahead.
Yes.
So, which is kind of more a well, let's call it a customer-managed journey.
Yeah, sure.
How do you think could we entice companies to be less focused on their own interest, but keep their own interests or look at their own interest as the positive outcome of helping me?
Yes. So,
Please.
companies are not charities.
No, they are not, but that's a positive outcome.
Although, of course, some charities are companies. That's another thing entirely. If you think back to business process engineering back in the 1990s, the Michael Hammer Hammer and Champy wrote Engineering the Corporation in 1990. That started a whole thing around BPR. And at that time, there was a whole conversation around, should we start by improving what we've got? Or should we create a new world based on what customers actually want there to be?
Yeah.
And the HBR article in 1990 that really popularized re-engineering in the business press was the HBR article, which is entitled Re-engineering Work, Don't Automate, Obliterate. In other words, work out what the hell customers want, because re-engineering was all about internal processes facing the customers. Work out what customers want, and then work out how you can do it faster, easier, better than what you're doing today. A lot of customer experience programs today start, not necessarily falsely, but limit themselves by looking at what people do today. Here's our customer journey map of what people currently do, or the customer path of what we currently offer them, and we try and improve it. But by looking at customers' jobs to be done, and their desired outcomes, what are they trying to get done? Then you can identify, are there better ways than what we currently offer, or what competitors currently offer, to get those things done? If we know what customers are trying to get done, we're going to identify better ways to do them. An opportunity to improve what we've got, to improve the things we offer, or if necessary, to reinvent things in order to be able to give customers more what they want, recognizing there are many ways of what we want to get done ourselves as a company. At the end of the day, it's a set of trade-offs you need to make. You can give customers everything they want, but then you probably won't make any money.
Yeah, don't say everything
you want, and customers won't stay with you very long. So it's achieving a dynamic trade-off and then learning quickly after you've done that and improving continuously.
I don't say give them everything what they want, but I mean there obviously are boundaries because we want to make some money. Yeah, the three of us and the four of us too. Yeah?
But if you think about it, we're not godlike, we're not omniscient and omnipotent. We have to try things out. We're not very good at, and shouldn't have to a consultant, should I? You're not godlike or omnipotent.
Yeah, don't spill the beans here. People are losing faith in us.
And here's my proposal. So we have to try things out and learn. I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that book?
Yeah.
40 years, 20 million
days. Yeah, the Toyota.
It's a fantastic book, one of the best books I've ever read. The success of Toyota is about trial and error, about Kaizen, continuous improvement, and a few of the things that obviously are part of the Toyota production system. So, they implemented all those different ideas. In fact, 95% of them within 2 weeks by the person who identified them. When I worked at Toyota, continuous improvement wasn't a competition you had at the end of the year. It was everybody's day job. My best ever campaign as a marketing man achieved a 35% conversion rate. So 35% of every person we contacted bought a car, insured the car, and financed it to Toyota. But that wasn't achieved because we're brilliant at marketing. It was achieved because we started out with a much lower response rate, and then we made changes every single week to the campaign. So after a year, it looked completely differently, and we achieved 35% response rate. How many campaigns that are given by marketers today are ever even looked at afterwards, other than for attribution statistics? Yeah. How many get improved and changed? In my experience, not all that many. And the same goes for experiences and lots of other things that companies do. Most of our innovation in large corporations is through continuous improvement. I estimate that even the likes of Google achieve 70% of innovation is driven by continuous improvement, not by sustaining or by breakthrough innovations.
What you're now saying ties pretty much into Ray's observation, right? Which I would formulate even a little stronger, isn't it? That RTIM is a kind of a precondition, a precursor for journey orchestration, a sine qua non.
It's a good question, and Ray is one of the leading thinkers in the journey orchestration. In fact, I would say Ray probably knows more about this than I do, to be perfectly honest. As does Phil Venville, both working for Thunderhead in this case. But you know, in terms of, if you think about it, if I'm on a journey towards my goals in real time, I'm here right now talking to you or dealing with you through the internet, whatever it may be, on the end of a telephone. Increasingly these days, it's on your mobile handset. You know, we live on the edge today. So I'm interacting with you in real time, and I need help to get my stuff done. I need data, a little bit of data to me to inform my decisioning. I need a bit of decision support. Maybe I need a bit of automation to help me. I need all that in real time, driven by what you know about me and what I'm trying to get done. And this is what real-time interaction management tools do. But I'm on a journey towards my goal, so I can optimize my current interaction. But I ought to do that in the knowledge I've got other things I'm most likely to take. So if I go a step beyond journey mapping, which I'm not a big fan of, as you know, my LinkedIn post of late, towards analytics, we look at what journeys people really have carried out in the past. We've got millions of customers. They also all have millions of different journeys. Most of them aren't completely different, of course. Most of them are very similar. But we need journey analytics to understand what people really do. So where journey orchestration picks up from real-time interaction management is where it starts to knit those interactions into a coherent whole. And in some cases, arbitrage these interactions that are available to you right now in order to achieve a better outcome for customers, to get their designed goals faster, easier, better, and getting a outcome for the company at the same time. So I see, you know, RTIM and journey orchestration, RTIM and Joe overlap quite a lot, certainly in terms of technology provided by leading edge vendors like Pega and Thunderhead. But at the same time, I see RTIM as a precursor to data-driven journey orchestration.
Yeah, you can't orchestrate a journey if you can't manage the interactions. This
is talking about data-driven, technology-enabled journeys now. You know, you can have a journey without any technology at all. You get into the corner shop, other than having a till, should you actually be allowed to leave your home and go to a shop, of course, then there isn't much technology involved other than the till that you see. If you go to a large supermarket, they know a lot more about you than the corner shop does, because they have a whole load of ecosystems that are capturing data. And you may got a real-time customized coupon as part and parcel of your till receipt. But a little bit later, you get a personalized newsletter if you sign up for them, providing offers that are only for you. You know, a company like Tesco, they'll be running 15 to 30,000, at least when the last time I looked at 15 to 30,000 different varieties of newsletter built around personalized knowledge about you, the customer. But you don't do that. That's a technology solution. Your corner shop, perhaps the best experience you get, because it's very personal and empathetic, use much technology at all. If you've got millions of customers, I'm afraid you have to use the technology.
Okay, which might bring us to probably helping Christy a little. So she says she's confused about the low opinion of Germany mapping.
Okay.
Where it provides value to coordinate it, at least to plan it.
So let's think about it a little bit more carefully. So if I traditionally, so a lot, still done a lot today, a agency of some kind or internally will go and work with a company. They may interview some customers. They may do a bit of ethnography if you're really looking, but often they won't. They'll talk to frontline staff or to management, and they'll create a journey map, a stylized representation of what the average customer goes through. But it's not a real journey map. You know, maybe 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 100 customers really does that journey. All the other customers take different journeys. They stop, they go back, they leave, and they come back later, or they leave and don't come back at all, or they stop their journey completely because they're not getting enough of what they want. So it's not a real journey. It's simplistic, it's unrealistic, and in my view, it's unusable, except for one thing. It's great as a way to show to management what customers really have to go through. Because let's face it, many managers today, because of the nature of management and the busyness that they have, don't talk to many real customers. They don't get to understand what the voice of customers is really like. They see reports and they see market research, but they never talk to real customers. At Toyota, we had a principle called Genchi Genbutsu, which roughly translates into go see for yourself. Yeah, read the reports, look at the data, do the analytics, but go see for yourself. And so, that translates in this particular way into a journey map is a simplistic stylization of a hypothetical journey that people go on, but it's not a real journey. If you get real journey data and do journey analytics, then you can create Sankey diagrams or network diagrams that show you what real people do and the branches they make and which interactions have the lowest probability of getting to the end, which interactions cause problems. If 75% of people go to ring the call center and 25% go to your web application, you've got a problem, depending what it is, of course, which one they interact with, of course. So you got information about which customers do various things, so you get a real view. The sweet spot is journey analytics to understand what customers really do. The data will only tell you what people have done. It won't tell you what they wanted to do, what they'd like to have done if they had the opportunity. And design research, ethnography, and all the things we know from designers that allows us to understand all the things, why people go on the journeys they do, and what other journeys they go on with other people that you don't know about, and what would they have liked to have done. How do you give them the opportunity to do so, but you didn't?
That ties back nicely to what you were just saying about who knows more about the customer, how the local Tesco, the local supermarket has, they know the customer better because they have more data, but the local shop owner probably knows the customer better because they've actually had conversations with them.
We've got different sorts of data, haven't we? So if you think about the four sorts of data we talk about, let's bring Christian back in a second. I don't want to lose that. It's a very good question.
Well, I'm coming back to that anyways.
If you think about, we have zero-party data, stuff that I tell you, stuff that I volunteer to you. My local corner shop knows a hell of a lot more about me than Tesco does because I know the people who serve. We know from the research, say Lilianda and Ruza work on real customer relationships. Most people don't want a relationship with a company. Why would they want to do that? They don't fulfill any of the requirements to have a realistic relationship. They have a spurious one instead, which is okay for most companies. Where they do have a relationship with a company is because they know somebody in the company, a person that they can relate to. I can relate to my corner shop. I can relate to my coffee shop that they go downtown to on a Saturday to enjoy the Italian-style coffee. Even have to go into town for a cup of coffee, they come back out afterwards. They know me and I know them. So they have lots of first-party data, zero-party data I've told to them. They have a little bit of first-party data they've gathered during interactions, of course, but large corporations have much more of that to event streams. And, of course, they can always take in second-party data from other people that I interact with and third-party data that's been generated by data brokers. From my perspective, the most valuable data is that first-party and zero-party data, particularly stuff that's done in real time, that companies don't know about.
We lost you in between.
Did you? Am I back again?
Well, I don't know if we lost. You lost him.
I lost him. Okay. So pluralis majestatis.
Yeah. But interesting enough is, Graham, what you told about your experience with Toyota and what you stated very often, that this book you showed us, which was still in a very new and good shape, is from 1990.
High quality cover. That's why it's still looking good.
Yeah, Japanese printing, I guess. Yeah. 1990. Yeah, well, these days they still use proper materials. Now, what I wanted to express is that as you took that book and showed that book and made a comment on that one, and it's important to you that this book is still delivering interesting ideas after this period of time, which is over 20 years.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that is, for me as a dinosaur, very important that we do have in our industry a lot of common sense things we seem to forget about all the technology we love to utilize and that artificial intelligence, and we forget to go in empathy and use human intelligence again.
Yes.
Yeah? And the mom and pop shop, as I learned that this is the expression for my Tante Emma, is the story which I love to have as the 7-Elevens. 3 or 4 shows ago, we had a friendly guest which gave us some insights on how the 7-Eleven is doing an analysis of incoming calls they to a certain and do not have their shops all open. Yeah.
Yes.
And they have due to that a very precise analysis about what the customer is thinking about their offerings and where they would like to have a better service.
Yes.
So on that complete journey, my impression is that in a useful sense, one should keep in touch with the customer also in these pandemic times and to find a suitable way. This is why I asked about, is an organization which is more customer experience driven more survival fit than one which does not look for the customer happiness?
That's a good question, which I'm pleased to tell you, research from the 1990s by the Marketing Science Institute can answer for you. Back in the 1990s, the MSI started a program on what they called a market orientation.
Yeah.
And market orientation is composed of 3 things. It's composed of an element of customer orientation. So who is the customer? What are they trying to get done? How can we help them? Mm-hmm. It's composed of an element of competitor orientation. Because obviously, we're not the only people out there, unless you're these days a Google, a Facebook, one of those sort of companies with a more or less a quasi monopoly. Most companies have competitors that need to be able to provide equivalent or better services to them in order to be able to compete. And of course, the third element was what they would call today we would call capabilities. So the ability to create value in the markets by combining elements of processes and data and technology and roles and those sorts of things. So their research looked at which of these combinations provided the best results, and they found very clearly that a market orientation, combining all 3, an orientation around customers, around competitors and capabilities, the 3 C's as I think about them, produce superior results to a customer orientation. So, but if you think about that, it makes sense. So companies are operating in competitive markets. There are plenty of competitors. A lot of the competitors today didn't exist 5 years ago, and they don't have all the legacy baggage that you might have as a large organization. We need to be able to compete. Customers don't change what they want to get done, their jobs very often, but they change their behaviors and they change the tools they use over time. So you need to understand that. And of course, your job is to arbitrage those 2 worlds, the world of the customer and the world of the competitor, so your capabilities to go to market.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's achieving that trade-off between what can competitors do, what the customers want, and what can we do, is, as far as we know today, the most successful way to do about this. I seem to remember there's a study about 10 or 15 years ago, I don't remember the details, where they identified that they looked at, I think, 700 companies, and those with the highest market orientation added approximately $40,000 per employee to the bottom line. I can fish out the study if you want, but I don't have the years. I remember the headline figures. $40,000 per employee is a significant amount of money. It'd be good if you could do that with marketing or sales or lots of other things, but that's through market orientation. Pulling all those levers to do with customers, competitors, and your capabilities to deliver superior value in the marketplace in a competitive way. And of course, changing and adapting all the time.
That is a number. Wow.
But it goes back to the 20th thing. We talked about it a minute ago, with the idea of continuous improvement. The reason why this book is still relevant after 30 years, it's been in 1990s, now 2020, it's 30 years ago, because it represents what we now know as a best practice, the best way to do continuous improvement. There is no better way that we know currently in terms of running continuous improvement programs. A lot of our work in, let's say, CRM today is what I would describe as a good practice. It's quite complicated. We need to ask experts to help us to implement it, but we know roughly how things get. We've got good practices about how things work. Customer experience and service design, or service experience as I think about it today, is not really either of those things. It's in that complex domain of the Cynefin model, the Cynefin framework. We don't really know. There are no good practices and best practices yet. People are trying things out to see what works. And so we have to do lots of experimentation in parallel in order to be able to abstract good practices at a later point in time. So maybe in 5 years, we'll have good practices in service experience. Maybe in 10 years, we will have best practices, things that we know are the best things to do. I had a conversation with Bob Thompson a little while ago. On this, we identified that 75 to 90% of customer experience programs fail to deliver the goodies that they were promised, that their business case is predicated upon. They don't get implemented, they don't deliver the results, or they get abandoned shortly afterwards. That's no different to what happened at the beginning of CRM and BPO and ERP and TQM. You need to understand all those levers we need to be able to pull in order to make these programs work.
You just said something interesting. So what the Toyota guys did was establishing a best practice on how to improve processes, or how to improve in general.
How to improve in general,
which is kind of a meta thing. So, but let's bring that down to, for example, orchestrating or managing journeys, delivering journeys, enabling journeys is probably the best word there. Yeah. So how do you think that can be done in a way that you don't, before you really know what's important and where it will evolve to? Because the best practice of now, in terms of a good journey that I may offer to you, may be pretty crappy tomorrow.
Yeah, indeed. So it's a good question, but fortunately, because we've got a lot of, we've had tools in the marketplace doing this sort of work for quite a number of years. You know who they are. Yeah, I think we've started to establish a body of good practice around how to make this work. We know the sort of factors we need to consider when we're trying to create interactions with customers, whether they're marketing, sales, service, or whatever. We've gone beyond the point where every interaction is an opportunity to sell, to where now an interaction it's a next best action, not a next best offer. Paper I was reading and a paper reading earlier today points out very clearly. So we've learned a lot in the meantime. We can use analytics, we can use all the data we have, in particular what it is from event streaming today, which you can use to understand in quasi-real time what we think customers are trying to do with the information we've got. We don't have a lot of the zero-party data, we don't have the contextual data in the world of the customer. What we've got a lot of information to make it good, to infer what we think customers like to do based on what other customers have done in a similar way in the past. And so we can use that. So you might be in a contact, and you might be re-estimating what the next best action is 10, 20, 50 times during that contact. In order to be able to dynamically update what you think the next best action is to carry out. So we've gathered a lot of good practices over the years, and through the power of analytics, and particularly artificial intelligence, which can run a lot of simulations and a lot of pattern recognition activities all at the same time, we can learn a lot in the process.
Just highlighting Ray's answer to this. What do you think of this concept?
Yeah, I'm probably less of a fan of ML than Ray is, only because I know there's a lot of false positives out of ML. ML is a pattern recognition technology at the best of times. So, and often the patterns we might recognize don't necessarily make much sense in the real world. That's a really interesting point. Now, with the power of machine learning of various kinds today, we can do things so fast and so quickly that we're unable to understand the proposal and suggestions that the ML might be generating. If I look at GDPR, if that decision or it's fully automated and has a negative impact on the customer, so you don't get offered a valuable a solution that you think would be useful, in theory, you could ask the provider, the service provider, the company, to explain their decision, and you could insist they make a manual assessment of your decision. So we reach this point where ML becomes so powerful and so inexpensive, providing you've got the data and technology and to be able to run it that way, that we can generate solutions that nobody can possibly understand, that we can't explain to customers, that may fall foul of GDPR. Hence, currently, the EDPS, the European Data Protection Supervisor, going through the process along with the European Union and also the UK government notice as well, of creating guidelines for data ethics, so as applied to artificial intelligence. So how can we make AI make intelligent and ethical decisions rather than just identifying patterns that may make no sense to anybody and may actually be false anyway? Ray's certainly right that over time, as technology increases and its power and we have better data, that a lot of the orchestration will become autonomous. So the machine will be making the choices, will be very granular choices, and will be made in continuously tested as we gather new data. As an event team comes in with additional data, that will be fed into a reassessment of the next best action, which may of course be doing nothing. It's not necessarily going to be a sales prompt or a service prompt, may actually be doing nothing at all. As part of the process, and of course, then feed into the process of working out what interactions you make now as part of a longer term journey, because most of the value for the customer is not during the journey, it's at the end. If they don't get enough value during the journey, they might decide to go to somewhere else, or they might decide to stop and abandon the journey. And how many carts get abandoned when we're shopping because we're not getting enough of what we want? But most of the value for the customers at the end of the journey when they get their desired outcomes from doing the job that they came to you to do in the first place.
Ray, actually, before giving his comment, had a very interesting question.
Okay, so we're entering an entirely new universe.
Yeah, a little corollary to it, but
I think if you look back to look to the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper operates in a single-sided market. He has a shop. You go to the shop. Inside the shop are loads of things on shelves. He gets the prices, and you ask, "Can I have a tin of beans?" And you say, "Here it is. That will be €1.10, please," or whatever a tin of beans costs. Probably about the same. But increasingly today, things aren't run through single-sided markets like that. They run through multi-sided markets like Amazon or the Apple ecosystem. Or increasingly today, we're setting up platforms where multiple partners come online. So go to American Airlines. The American Airlines Air Advantage loyalty program has 10,000 different partners. You can earn and burn miles on as part of their program. The Visa card was set up in one of the first multi-sided market platforms. It was set up in 1958. We've had this platform's run for 70 years. As a guide. So increasingly things are done through platforms, and platforms bring thousands of vendors together to sell to millions of customers. Or these days, go to Amazon, millions of vendors to sell to billions of customers. And the key thing is, who normally would never meet. So I think Ray is exactly right. In the long term, as we start to look to ecosystems of service partners, rather than you operating a single-sided marketplace, ecosystems of service partners on a multi-sided market platform, like an Amazon, like an eBay, those sorts of things, like a credit card, like American Airlines, frequent flyer program, then you see this need to start to understand journey orchestration on a larger scale. But the challenge, of course, is sharing data and getting permission to do so. And again, it comes down to GDPR in Europe and CCPA in the USA. These will almost certainly provide limits on how much data can be shared and consent to do certain things. But of course, customer giving consent is part of being a member of a platform of some kind. If I go to American Airlines and join the Air Advantage program, I'm giving American Airlines permission to share my data with a range of partners in order to make offers. That's part and parcel of signing up. That's why you're going there in the first place. You're not going there, just to be a member. So I think Ray is right that as we move towards an ecosystem model, then we need to start to orchestrate journeys over a larger range of partners and a larger range of journeys, because the journeys I might be on with a bank are going to be different to the journeys I'm on with a telco or with an insurer or with a retail organization, all on the same platform. If you go to some bank, say, look at Suncorp in Australia. If you go, they have a portal that looks after house, the meta job of manage my home. So mortgage, paying for finding a house, moving house, painting your fence, having a solicitor, finding a estate agent that's competent and good. They provide a platform that's it's like an everyday bank, an Accenture term, everyday bank for manage my home. They orchestrate that platform as a service to customers. And of course, I get to talk to a solicitor that can help me to sell my home that has been vetted by the bank, and an estate agent, and somebody to paint my fence, somebody to move my furniture. So that sort of ecosystem comes along. Whether you have centralized orchestration or whether you have a more edge-based orchestration with providing guidance and rules, we'll have to wait and see. My own belief is that things are inexorably moving towards the edge, because at the edge on your handset, they have all the data that we don't have in the center. My real world, where we all live in handset, those two worlds, the world of the customer and the world of the competitors. So you need that now. So what I've said earlier on is feeding through. No, it's gone now. So so I think we're living in a world increasingly on the edge, where all that contextual data is, the warm data that Phil Venville talks about, all that really valuable contextual data is that helps me to really help me to make better choices. But in the center, we don't know that exists. We don't know, we haven't collected it. It isn't there. We've got event data from what I've done, consumption data. But we don't have all that contextual data about my real world. Therefore, my view is that inexorably over time, and it's going to be a while before it gets there, we're going to see that all this interaction management and journey orchestration is going to be done on the edge, probably using federated learning. So if you look at, there's a guy I know called Ronnie Shuritz, professor at Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, but also a founder of a company called Prenode. Prenode does federated learning. So I don't need to collect data in the center. All my analytics can be done in a federated way on devices. Center learns about the analytics and can standardize those things and share those with all the other devices. The learning is done on the edge using contextual data that the center doesn't even need to know about. Now, this is the future. Edge-based processing, 5G networks with very broad bandwidth, very low latency, Institute of Things providing continuous streams of real-time data. Now, this is where we're moving towards.
Just seeing what's...
Yeah, I think my focus, we have jobs to be done. We hire multiple partners sometimes. So my example with the real-world example of a UK bank's retail mortgage journey, 18 different potential partners. As a customer, I can go, if the bank isn't helping me to get my job done or an interaction towards moving me towards my job, then I'll go talk to somebody else. That might be somebody that I can't deal with from the bank, so it might be a solicitor in order to do the legal elements of transacting and moving, but it might also be an estate agent or an expert who knows what to look out for. The bank in this particular case, 1/3 of interactions were with the bank. 1/3 could have been with the bank, but weren't. And 1/3 probably couldn't have been with the bank because they didn't have the knowledge, skills, and competencies to provide those services. But the bank could have provided support to help you to work out what to do. A check. How do you find a good solicitor? We're not experts on legal matters, so we need to go to talk to experts about how to do the conveyancing process of selling a house. But a checklist to help me select a really great solicitor, would have been a really valuable bit of content. The best source of this actually at the time was from one of the comparison websites, who provided a 60-page guide to mortgaging your home. The bank could have provided that, but it didn't. They were there providing sales messages instead, which weren't very informative and weren't very useful.
Balakrishna actually confirms the point. So what it boils down to for me is somehow always the difficulty between, do I map the journey or do I create a map of journeys? And
a map of journeys, what do you mean by that?
A map of journeys is, well, tracing the individual journeys and finding the pathways that the customers do take by means of their stepping stones, basically, that they take. So one is follow a trace, and customer journey mapping basically is create a path.
You create a single path, because you don't tend to create many. If I have 100 customers going on a journey towards a goal, or to get my job done and get my desired outcomes, they will all take different journeys. 10 of those may be identical because it's a very common journey. Some of them may have different interactions. Some of them may go back because they didn't like what they're going to make, go have a recursive step. Some of them may go elsewhere. And of course, some of them may abandon en route and say, it's not working for me. So I'm going to give up and go away. So if I create a single journey, my criticism point of journey maps, if I go through a design process to create a single journey, it is almost useless. I'll say that again, almost useless to guide the design of how you should design, build, and operate service experiences, because it's simplistic, because it's unrealistic, because it's unimplementable. So, to your point, if I can use data about what customers really do, so rather, if I don't have a lot of technology and a lot of data that it generates about that, or event stream analytics to identify things, rather than create a journey map, I would create a journey catalog or interaction catalog. Catalog all the interactions you have with customers and talk to as many customers as you can, and then the customer-facing people you can. Catalog all the interactions they have, and also at the same time, we can capture information about those interactions. But what was the interaction you had beforehand, and what was the interaction you did afterwards? Use that to generate your own journey, journey map of maps, as you describe it, what we think of as journey analytics today. And then you can use that to abstract out what is the typical journey map.
I love Christy's comment. And by the way, I really love the interaction here, so that we have a real discussion going on.
I apologize, Christy, that we didn't get back to the question earlier on. Well, I'll answer Christy's question directly. So if I take a designly approach, so I'm sitting together with some customer-facing staff or with some customers, maybe 20, 30, 40, or even though I've got 10 million customers, and I use it to generate a journey map, there's not going to be enough detail. It's not representative of real customers. It's an artificial representation of a stylized journey. If I could then, as an alternative, if I can gather real data about customers, the journeys customers really went on interaction by interaction, recursive step by recursive step, etc., I can use that data to generate a stylized map. Here's the most common map that, if you look at all our 10 million customers, they all travel down. But I can also use to say, okay, here's a vignette of a part of a journey where we have a problem. So everybody in this interaction is going to the call center. They're not going to where we'd like them to go, which is the website, which we think is adequate. So what's the problem? Now I can do a bit of additional research to understand, why do people go to the call center? Why don't they go and use the web, which we think is good enough? And I can use that as a way to improve that. And then I can measure continuously how those improvements change the volume of people going to the call center versus going to the web. So it becomes a dynamic tool to test and learn from changes and improvements into the customer's journey in order to be able to do that.
Christy, we actually should invite you directly into the call.
Maybe you should. I don't disagree with anything Christy has said. My point is, if we take a designly approach without having lots of data, the journey maps will be not very useful because they're not representative, not very accurate. the more data we can get, augmented with design research to understand why, how to make sense of the data, better we're going to create real journeys abstracted from the journey analytics, and they become the foundation for real journey service experience design, and then obviously managing that through RTIM and Joe, which requires tools.
Yeah.
Again, journey analytics plus design research is a sweet point. It's not either or. If I have to take one or the other, I'll take journey analytics any day of the week.
Might it be that we somehow are in the depths or shoals of terminology? Because what customer journey mapping to me appears to be often used as a tool, like you said, create one pathway. So it's kind of route planning. Yeah, let's compare it to route planning. So with the difference to what you're explaining is probably more creating the overall map.
The map of maps.
Yeah. Well, not a map of paths.
Map of paths.
Map of journeys. The map of journeys. Yeah, a map of journeys. So it's basically creating the overall, literally a map. You have the various points, intersections in there, and you have connections between those intersections, which give possible steps in between. So maybe this already is solves quite a lot of the confusion.
Not everybody can do journalism. You need good data, and you need raw data from a variety of channels to be able to do that. And it needs to be relatively recent and clean. You'd be surprised how many corporations' data is of poor quality, if they even know where all the data is. And often it's with third parties. You need good data to do journey analytics. If you think about it, let's be pragmatic. Think back to George Box, the famous UK statistician's statement, where he said, all models are wrong, but some models are useful. If you're starting as an absolute beginner, then you use whatever you can because it's useful, even though it's not necessarily correct. But that was true during journey maps, even though, as you know, I'm not a big fan because of their inaccuracy and their unrepresentativeness. But the aim should be to get more data and augment that with design research so that you can create better models that are more accurate and more useful on which to make decisions. Because if you think about it, we're designing the service experience. We're designing the interaction with the customer. Let's not forget, interaction with the customer is the only time as a corporation we ever create value. Everything else is a cost. Think back to what Rucker said. Customer interaction, marketing and innovation, the end sources of value. Everything else is a cost. So in our world, the interactions is where we create value. Everything else destroys value. Simply in the way that enables us to be able to create value through interactions doesn't create any value itself.
I guess that Ray pretty much agrees with you.
I think so. So if you're let's think about it. If you're designing, designing a service experience solution, you need to do journey analytics based on what journeys people have done in the past. Once you've designed that, then you should be able to take real-time data, the way he's describing, the dynamic map, to know how to manage that customer throughout their journey, both for the interaction I'm at now and interactions in the future, bearing in mind the ones they've had in the past and where we think because we want to get to, what are their jobs to be done, what are their ultimate goal. I think Ray's exactly right. That we've got static historical analytics, wouldn't say what customers really did as part of the design process. We've got dynamic journey analytics, or dynamic mapping, however you want to describe it. It's a way to manage the customer in real time, bearing in mind they're on a journey, not just having interaction with you. This is the world of technology. You can't, it's very, very hard. It's impossible to do it without technology unless you have a corner shop, in which case it's relatively easy.
I have one thing that still bothers me, which is conversational. I'm not too greedy today. It's the conversational commerce part of it. How does that tie into journey orchestration?
Okay, so I think that's quite simple. So let me take the logical sequence. So customers are part of an ecosystem. what Ray's point earlier.
Yeah.
And they'll interact, and customers have jobs to be done. They'll interact with different members of the ecosystem to get those jobs done. And during those interactions, they share resources that help them, to get their jobs done. So customers embark on journeys in order to get their jobs and their desired outcomes. That's the journey map of the customer pathway. They may be on multiple different journeys at the same time. So we have to think about how all the journeys flow and how they fit into each other, which is, again, Ray's point about the platform. We get the ecosystem and the platform. We need to manage interactions in real time because that's how customers live journeys. It's what I'm doing now, a little bit of what I did in the past, not what I want to get to. We have the real-time interaction management. We need to knit those journeys into coherent whole. So all the interactions are part of a whole that gets you towards the customer, towards their goal faster, easier, and better. And of course, you as a company towards your goals as well. All very engineering. It's all to do with technology and machinery. We're humans. We're a storytelling species. We live off the basis of narratives. So conversational commerce has two flavors. The one that I think about it as is how do we wrap real conversations, meaningful conversations around all the interactions in the journey with customers in order to build engagement. Because I don't think, RTIM or Journey Orchestration is one of those things that builds engagement, which is a sense of feeling and relationship towards you and the brand and what have you. Those things are built through narrative. Think back to the article I quoted before, Lillian and Rue's article on spirits versus real relationships. 5% of customers who had anything like a real relationship had it with a person in the company. And we relate to people, we tell stories, we're an emotional species. So that element is missing out of the Journey Orchestration. Conversational commerce wraps those meaningful conversations around all those interactions in the journey in order to be able to drive engagement. And if we know engagement, if we do this properly, that drives obviously higher engagement, drives higher satisfaction, drives high retention and loyalty, and of course all the other things that go with these sorts of positive activities. So the current state of the art is using natural language processing and machine learning through chatbots. But we can do manual things as well. It's a work by Daniel Stillman, who wrote his work about conversations. There's a whole load of tools you can use when you think about how do you design an interaction, how do you design a journey to build conversation with customers. And that's where Journey Orchestration is slowly moving towards. And companies like Webio or Life, Webio is what I know Paul Sweeney's company Webio. There's excellent work around how we use, in their case, chatbots to facilitate financial services interactions. But I've talked often with Paul about this, and it's all about how do we manage conversations, about how do we have conversations, about conversational theory, and all those sorts of things, the things that we need to be thinking about. So it's the next evolutionary stage. How do we make our journeys more human? By wrapping meaningful conversations into them and around them. If you think about it, it moves you one step back towards being able to be your corner shop, only to scale of millions or billions of customers, not just one at a time, as you come in the door.
I'm devil's advocate here. Yeah. Isn't it like conversational commerce? It's just another type of possible interactions that go into the journeys, the possible journeys.
Depends how you look at it. If you look at it as a web chat, then it is another interaction.
No, I'm not looking at it as a web chat. I'm just looking at. I'm probably rubbing myself on the word, commerce. So, commerce is one possible type of interaction, which is transaction.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So maybe we need to change the term. And the term is stuck, conversational commerce, because it was introduced 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's that conversational element. Maybe we need to find a better name. It's that conversational element of how we wrap meaningful conversations around the journeys, which are an engineering construct. Is what conversational commerce or conversational XYZ, we need to find a new word for commerce, is all about. So it isn't about interaction, it's a way of crafting meaningful narrative and conversation around those interactions in the journey.
Mm.
Help people to get their jobs and fight better and feel good about it. If you look outside just the story, then we know that if we want to, which comes from the work on customer service recovery,
Mm.
there are 4 sorts of justice we need to be able to provide in order to recover customers. We need to get a good outcome. We need to have an appropriate process. We need to have good information, but the most important of all these factors is we need to treat people like humans with empathy. And that's the bit that's missing from Artem and Joe, because it's an engineering construct. Conversational XYZ, conversational commerce. It's all about wrapping all this empathy around so we have the customers during their journeys.
Mm.
Yeah, and as Krishna points out, there are 2 or 3 books on conversational design.
Yeah.
Eric Hall, a designer, wrote a really good one. Daniel Stillman wrote another one that I picked up recently in conversation with Daniel, written by one of the design agencies. This is where we're moving towards, how we design a conversation.
And
as a human species, we do it naturally. When we talk, when we're talking now, we have a conversation, well, it's dialogue at the moment. But we have a conversation. Next best conversation is the way he points out. That's where we're going towards. Action, but next best conversation, because marketing should be conversation, service should be conversation, so should sales.
Yeah. Whereas I actually do not fully agree with Marshall there, because I dealt a lot with conversational systems, conversational platforms recently, and what you do there is actually you design the conversation. That's the job there.
I suspect that designed conversations tend to be a little bit like a stilted monologue. I'm going to. So we have a conversation, and here's my speech. It's a bit like Blackadder, when you start with a roar, and other customers I'm speaking in public, So there are frameworks we can use to create better conversations. Whether we should design a conversation, not quite so sure.
Yeah, well, how deep that actually is may be questionable, but this is where those platforms want to go. So
it's back to my point at the beginning, though. We're in a complex space now where we're having to do lots of experiments to see what works. Over time, we'll establish good practices, and over much further time, the best practices everybody is operating. And of course, by that time, we're probably going to have technology that passes the Turing test. We can't differentiate between it and a person. And by that time, by definition, it will have to be able to, running proper conversation. It's as Bob Hope famously said, if you can fake sincerity, you've got it made. And that's what we're supposed to do to be able to pass the Turing test.
Yeah, I think Prem nailed that part here too.
Bob Hope, wow, we are going back to history.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you do know, of course, as Hegel famously said, the only thing we learn from history is that we learn nothing from history.
Yeah. Yeah. So for some reason I can't hide this comment anymore. So Prem, you're stuck for eternity in here right now.
Brouhaha. So what a wonderful word that is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of artificial intelligence, which is machine and deep learning. So
I help you to get another one.
We lost Thomas. He's been dragged off by his doggy.
Oh, that is one of our tricks we do when we want to get it more exciting. Yeah, that one of us is jumping out, not the window, but out of a conversation. Yes. And do what you'd usually have if you would have had a Microsoft-driven system. You have your regular blue screens, but these days, with an Apple in the background, this will not happen.
There you go. You should at least have said, "I'll be back."
This be right back, BRB, is normally then in the internal chat shown, but honestly, I found this quite thrilling to see that a lot of folks which are very active in the discussion, taking part and
Sorry, back again.
Was it the dog or the network?
That was Comcast.
Yeah,
The
well,
network.
No, not the dog this time. She didn't. She didn't eat my cable. So I'm.
Yeah, I guess that you had some fun with your internet provider. Yeah, and
No,
now
not yet, but.
Yeah, well, these surprises do happen when you do not expect them. This is like a pandemic crisis,
Yeah.
and it comes back to the point of the resilience
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier. I would like to know a bit more on Mindshare from your end. Graham, is it useful that we do get more resilient to be more agile as organizations?
It's a good question. So let's differentiate between agile as a methodology like SAFe, LESS, Scrum, or Kanban, and agility as an ability to be able to sense and respond to changes in the environment. So most companies are either using or experimenting with agile methodologies, and you know, they have been much criticized. There's a little priesthood that set itself up like they had with Six Sigma, where if you're not part of the priesthood, then you know things aren't working out properly. So you get Scrum Masters with a week's training course, and he's dictating how things should be run. But recognizing that agile doesn't work in a lot of situations in those corporations anyway, in terms of methodology. But that's another conversation. Let's leave that to one side. In terms of being able to sense and respond to changes in the marketplace, I think that has always been an absolute essential. If you let's think about it. Look outside. Look at work by people like Michael Mauboussin. Michael Mauboussin is a financial analyst, used to work for CSFB in the olden days. And I'm not quite sure where he is today. He wrote a really great paper a little while ago called Death, Taxes, and Reversion to the Mean. And in that paper, he sketches out returns of companies over a 10-year period. What he finds is that over a 10-year period, they all revert to the mean. The best get worse, the worst get better. They all navigate towards the mean. What it tells you is we don't really know for sure what drives performance in corporations, despite all the surveys and the academic research and all the consultants. We don't really know. Michael Mauboussin says a large part of it's down to luck, and my yardstick is it's the 30-30-30 rule. 30% of performance is down to skill. 30% is down to luck, being in the right place at the right time. 30% is down to bluffing. So, which is maybe creating options and presenting things that you aren't necessarily able to do. And 10% is down to God knows what. We don't really know yet. So that 30-30 rule, in my mind, works pretty well. So if we're not really sure, if we're only really in command of 30% of our performance, or 40, or even 50%, we have to do a lot of experimentation. We have to try a lot of things out. That means you need to be really, really agile in terms of being able to sense and respond, or in fact, actually probe, sense and respond. Look for things that's going on that we can identify, make sense of those things, and then respond really, really quickly. There's another great paper that I've quoted over many years by Lehman and others on where do the best new product innovations come from. So as we know, most innovation has a 80 to 90% failure rate. Surprisingly, heavy engineering, 55% failure rate. Cosmetics, 95% failure rate. On average, 70 to 90% failure rate. So we don't really know what works well. In this research, the highest success rate was responding really, really fast to changes in customers' real behavior at a 95% success rate, not an 80% failure rate. That means being able to sense, what's going on in the marketplace. Probe what's going on in the marketplace, make sense of what you see, respond in real time through lots of parallel experiments. Parallel experiments so we don't succumb to the Hawthorne effect, where we start to see things just because we're doing experiments. Over time, we can abstract patterns of behavior that turn into good practices. And over time, those things become best practices. This is Dave Snowden's Cynefin model. And it applies to most situations. So agile as a methodology might be good for a certain part of that framework, but it's actually the ability to be able to probe, sense, and respond into an agile as a consequence.
Sorry, Graham, that is fairly unrelated. I'm making fun of Marshall, who made fun of Prem and himself.
Prem is a fine chap. I never met him in person. I don't think we've even talked, over the video. But I've been corresponding with Prem for 10, 15 years, and he does so many interesting things at Confluent. His excellence is unrecognized, I would say.
I hope you do get the chance to meet him. Hope you do get the chance to meet him in person. He's pretty nice. He's a good guy.
Definitely.
He's willing to put up with my crap, so he must be pretty nice.
The origin actually was this. Yeah. So how can analytics or machine learning based analytics, to spell it out, Marshall, help here or improve? I mean, this is something that actually should be part of it, isn't it? We're deviating right now quite a lot.
Who are you asking the question of, Marshall or myself?
I hope he's not asking me.
So we use tools to help us get our jobs done. And over time, our jobs are still the same, but understand customer behavior and to make good decisions based on that. And my analytical work, I was what you call the Oldham Rule. So we need to understand what the business objectives are. It's not so much analysis and analytics work done with a detailed understanding of what the objectives of the company are, because we can do it. We need to understand what the levers we can pull are, because there's no point in doing analytical work if we can't pull a lever to help achieve an objective. What's the point? It's there for purpose. It's not there just to have fun. Then I need to understand the data that I need to be able to use to do the analytics, and then the decisions I want to make using it, OLD. Then, because of my Toyota upbringing, if you like, I'm always looking for the most simple analytical tools that I can get away with. Bearing in mind, a lot of time it's not a case of just analyzing things. It's a case of being able to apply things in the marketplace that create value and earn revenue, if you like. So, and often we don't know what the answer is, so we need to try things out. So I'm looking for heuristics first, rules of thumb that I can use to do some experiments in the marketplace. And then when I've understood that, it's sufficiently I'm looking to develop algorithms, so small equations, if you like, or small algorithms to help me to make decisions. And a lot of the work we do in our Tim and Joe is about that. But of course, over time, they become best practices or better practices, and they become models. And that's where we can use, some of the automated analytical techniques to machine learning or deep learning that look at various sets of data as a way to identify patterns of behavior. So very, very, because of the automated nature of this work, once you've got the good data, it's a very, very powerful tool to develop algorithms and develop simple models. Over time, they become models of models. Martin Reeves at BCG talks about the self-tuning enterprise, an article in HBR a few years ago. Alibaba is an example of that, a company that drive a lot of the operational decisions in the company, including some decisions about setting up and disbanding existing companies. So that self-tuning element, what Ray talked about as automation of the journeys, automating of the analysis, in terms of understanding, becomes a part of that picture. But this is early days. So in a lot of ML, from my perspective, is using cross-sectional data to look at the moment in time, whereas a lot of Journey Orchestration requires longitudinal data and Markov models, which is slightly different to the AI models, in order to be able to understand behavior and how it changes over time, with or without Bayesian updating. There's a whole range of things. It's a complicated space. I'm not an expert in this in any way, shape, or form, but I do have a reasonable understanding of how it works out. So it's a powerful tool. We'd be stupid not to use it. It goes back to George Box. All models are wrong, but some models are useful. So ML is a great way to create more and more useful models, but it's no alternative to really understanding the situation on a broader level. It's a means to an end, not an end in itself.
Well said.
I think these have been great closing words, actually, unless you guys have another highly interesting question. Especially since we are 20 minutes over, as promised.
Well, the 20 minutes are a cool invested time.
It's not yet our record, by the way.
I understand that time is relative.
The aspect is simply that, to my liking, we have had an intense discussion on the sidewalk, you could say, where we had the ping pongs in FB, LI, YouTube, and in all other channels. And we even broadcast through Twitch, where I this time did not get a feedback. But saying this, it is really impressive to see that we have really a cool hit with this webcast today.
Yeah.
I got so much sidetracked pings. Ralph, this is a cool conversation. So I'm really grateful, and thanks, Graham, that you invested 20 more minutes in us and the audience. And instead of drinking lonesome your gin or with your wife, but sharing it with us virtually, which we appreciate. And I found it very thrilling to see that my hoped special guest on the sidetrack, Ray Gerber, did not disappoint us, that he gave us some interesting aspects to ping pong. And I would like to propose to you, Graham, that we will have another chat where we invite Ray together with you.
Great idea.
And Christy.
Ray's a very smart chap.
Yeah.
We worked for Thunderhead. Ray and Phil together produced some amazing thought leadership in the junior orchestration space. So having Ray on the call would be I would say it'd be a privilege to be on the call with Ray.
I think he would return that compliment.
And the suggestion about Christy is very well said, Thomas.
Well, we didn't get to all Christy's questions. I'm sure we're very much aligned, even though it would appear that some of the questions that we weren't quite so aligned. Often the devil is in the detail, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is what this format is about, right? It's about discussing, sharing knowledge, sharing expertises, and well, that enriches all of us. So I found that amazing. This was so far the most interactive conversation that we had.
Great,
definitely.
Yeah, so
definitely.
I'm pleased I finally managed to get my technology sorted out.
Yeah. Well, my technology left me today. So having said that, without you now leaving the conversation, I go offline now with many thanks many thanks to first you and all the participants who were so active. We hope to see you again.
I'll be back.
That's good. Oh, Terminator.